Good evening and welcome to BizTech's Aha, the coaching show. Now, this is a show that's all about coaching and is produced in partnership with Corporate Coaching Academy. I'm Brian Fernandez, and today we explore the topic of happiness in the workplace. Now, and giving us an expert insight into this topic, we have Siew Yen, who is a certified master coach, author, and also speaker of positive life and leadership. Now, Siew Yen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Really great. Thanks for having me here. Really excited to be here as well.
Now, Siew Yen, for a start, let's give the audience an overview of your background and your journey into coaching.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I would say that, I got into coaching when I was in around 2015. And it was such a life-changing experience because at that point in time, I was going through a really difficult challenge. So I often tell people that I got into coaching, not because I wanted to be a hero and to save others. It was actually
Okay.
more to see how I could coach myself through that difficult challenge. And along the way, I discovered that, actually coaching was such a meaningful experience because I was able to help others, you know, um, find out their self-limiting beliefs and unlock their potential as well. And I think it was a really transformational journey. And that's why I believe in giving back in coaching. And most of my coaching is also based on positive psychology principles as well, which I can elaborate more further. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
And
also
you,
great that,
sorry, go ahead. It's also great.
yeah, it was also great that I got into Corporate Coach Academy. And that's where I learned about appreciative and purposeful coaching. So that was something that was really interesting too. Yeah.
Now, Siew Yan, give us an idea of so prior to coaching, what's your corporate background? You currently work for an oil and gas company. What sort of roles have you done in the past, and how do you think that uniquely helps you to be a better coach?
Oh, I love that question. The reason why I love that question is because when I was studying, I was a confused kid, just like anyone else. And Asian parents, right? They said that in order to be successful, you either become a lawyer, accountant, or engineer. And I said that, well,
Yes.
I couldn't become a accountant, I mean, an engineer or a lawyer, so I decided to become an accountant. I did an accounting and finance degree. Somehow, I managed to scrape through it through that 3 years, and actually I became a corporate banker. But I realized every day as I woke up, I did not look forward to getting up to work, to doing my job. So I asked myself, is this something that I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I got really scared and I said that no, no, this can't be it. So that's when, and it was not common for people to switch careers right at that point in time. But I said, I want going to do something different. So I said, what is it that I can do? I decided to leverage on my strengths, which was on writing and communication. And so that's when I went to a PR agency. As everyone knows, working
Oh,
in an
that's a
agency,
really big career
yes,
shift.
a big career shift. I was in the big four companies. It was really prestigious, but I told myself that no, 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 I can't survive in this. And I was also in a Singaporean bank. But then I decided, to go into a small boutique agency. And it really toughened me up because, as you know, agency life is not easy.
Yes.
You work day and night, you hardly see the sun.
Yes.
But I learned a lot. It was really, jumping in and trying to maximize my potential. And from there, I decided to go into corporate communications and go into branding. But after a while, I felt that, I've done branding and comms, and I thought that, I really love psychology, mindset, and, helping others develop their potential as well. And that's when coaching came in. So I always believe that, that's why I also do career coaching because I always, I know my heart goes out to people who feel like they're stuck in their jobs and they're too afraid to move because the golden handcuffs when your lifestyle is already at a certain point and you're afraid to get a cut in your salary. But I think there's no it's never too late to change because when I changed from different industries I still had transferable skills. So that's why I always tell people it's never too late to learn. It's all about upskilling, and it's never too late to change as well, to go
And,
what you want. Yeah, go for what
and
you want.
Siew Yan, really, what you just told us is so appropriate with when we talk about really the topic of the day,
Yeah.
happiness in the workplace, because you just started off early on by saying, well, you didn't like going to work.
No. No.
Can we start then with you defining happiness in the workplace and why it's
Yeah.
really important for each individual to have their own definition, not what others think about it, but their own definition of happiness?
Yeah. I think it's really important because at a certain point in your career, it's not just about money anymore. It's about a sense of belonging, achievement and recognition. And I think it's really important for people to define their own happiness and also find out what really brings them joy at work. And it's about finding purpose, right? And I can give you a simple
Mhm.
example. Um, do you like to eat sushi, Brian?
Yes, I do. I'm one of those that among the masses that likes Japanese food.
Yes. So there's a documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Have you seen that documentary?
No, I've not.
Okay, I suggest if you can go and watch it. So Jiro
Okay.
Ono, I think he's still alive. He's about 90 years old, and he's an artisan. He's a living master chef in making sushi. And I always admire people who are able to take their level of craft to the next level. And you it may find it very boring, but he's like doing continuous improvement. I mean, you think of sushi as like just slapping fish on a rice, right? But as you know, there's a certain temperature. Even the way of slicing the fish,
Yes,
it
and
requires,
you know,
yeah,
Siew Yen, if you know
yeah,
your sushi, you will know
yes,
that to be just a master sushi chef takes
yes,
7 years to perfect just slicing
correct,
fish.
yeah. And not everyone can do it, doing the same thing in and out, but because he loves what he does so much, he literally dreams of sushi. And that was the title of the documentary. And it's because he finds purpose in it. He gets a lot of joy seeing people enjoy his food. So of course, not everyone can be a sushi master. So that's why, again, what value can you bring to other people? What are your strengths? And that's where you'll find a lot of meaning and purpose in your work. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are just going through just getting the money at the end of the month and just not seeing any engagement in your work. So I would say, regardless of what it is, it's important to define your own happiness at work, and that will make it more fulfilling for you. Yeah.
And also this is the challenge, right, which leads me to my next question around happiness in work,
Yeah.
at work, and how it impacts your personal well-being and personal productivity. Because
Mm,
I'm just taking up on what you said. If you're not engaged in your job,
yeah.
your productivity can't be anything more than mediocre. While at the
Correct.
same time, if like you went through before as the person who worked in the Singaporean bank, as you said, and also the big four,
Hmm.
going to work was drudgery. And
Yeah.
therefore your personal well-being, you were probably not in the best place.
No. Yeah. So
You know,
yeah, I would
sorry,
say
go ahead.
that, yeah. Sorry. Do you have something on to add on to that?
No, so how does it impact again? So it's just really that importance of being happy and how that's such a detrimental effect. If you're not happy at your job, you can't perform at work. You literally probably can't perform in your social life as well because you're not happy.
Yeah. So this is really proven by research, right? So there's this person named Sean Eckhor. He's the author of the Happiness Advantage, and he teaches at the Harvard School. And he believes that happiness, normally we feel that success leads to happiness, right? But it's the other way around. Happiness leads to success. And like what you rightfully said, if you're not happy, you will not be productive, and you will not be producing or performing at an optimum level. So I guess the golden question is, why are we not happy, and how can we be happy at work? So every person has their own individual reasons, but the key thing that I would like to share in this interview today is that we are responsible for our own happiness. And if everyone forgets what I said today, this will be the key message, because um, regardless of the situation you're in, you always have a choice in terms of how you respond. So in my case, I knew that this was not my calling when I was in that previous job. So, but I always tell people, even though you're in a job that you don't like, you have a personal responsibility to also perform at your highest level. So to me, those were my core values, right? Responsibility, being reliable. So while I was trying to search for the next job, I was also still performing the best that I can. And it's really about seeing what kind of satisfaction you can derive from your job as well, and also to find things that you can be grateful for on a daily basis at work. Yeah.
So, so again, there's a couple of things here as well that we need to kind of break down.
Mm.
There are sometimes people who are unhappy at work because they're literally a square peg in a round hole. Now,
Yep.
it could be a square peg in a round hole from a skill set basis. That's one aspect. The other aspect is also around square peg in a round hole from a corporate culture
Yeah.
standpoint, because the value systems may not be aligned. The language that perhaps people use is not aligned, that it's not something that you're comfortable with. And then that obviously then impacts happiness and also then impacts productivity. What are your views on this?
Oh no, absolutely true. Like what you said, skill set. So that was me, a square peg in a round hole when I was in the corporate bank and in the accounting firm. So um, I I had a choice, right? Whether I could stay on in the accounting firm and suffer, or make a choice, which was a very scary choice, which was to leave, seeing my friends progress in their careers while I literally went back to square one, going into a PR agency. But again, sometimes change is scary, but it may be necessary. What's more scary is if you stay stagnant and if you don't make a change. But of course, that takes time as well, right? And the other thing that you mentioned, cultural fit as well. If the culture is not the same or the culture does not fit you, it can lead to a very toxic environment. So again, you can always ask yourself when you face an issue or problem, can I accept the issue? Can I change the issue, or should I leave the problem?
And Siew
If
Yuan,
you
there's one more thing I want to add as well. Am
yes.
I the issue?
Yes, it could be that as well. It could be your own mindset, right? Yes, that's a good
Because
point.
you've got the poor attitude, you're not adapting. So
Yes.
again, from a corporate culture perspective and also from an organizational culture perspective, you have a responsibility when you go into an organization as an employee to fit in.
Yep.
Now, if it's too far apart from a value systems or from a fit and so forth, or of course that's an issue. But for you, it's about attitude. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you have the right attitude, and there is a some adjustment that needs to be done, and most people are like that. You need to make some adjustment. Is very rare. And you and I have worked for a number of years. You know that it's
Oh yeah.
very exceptionally rare for you to walk into a place and you feel completely comfortable, from our value systems, from our friends, and so forth, our colleagues. Almost never happens. It's often adjustments that need to happen. So you sometimes really are the limiter.
Yeah. And it's also good to remember that there is no perfect workplace, right? Every workplace would definitely has its issues, but of course it depends on the level of what you can tolerate and so on and so forth. And like what you said, right? It's also the person's mindset, whether they can accept the culture. And I think it's also being open to feedback from people. If you find people are giving you feedback like, hey, you're not acting according to the culture or whatever not. But secondly, also, I always tell people that if you are struggling, do seek help. There is no shame, or don't feel like there is any stigma in getting help as well. Because sometimes maybe that person is really struggling to fit into the company, maybe because they have some, mental health issues, which is really, quite realistic these days. That's why I strongly believe, that happiness in the workplace is not just a airy fairy thing. It's really bringing your best self to work, really believing in yourself that you can bring the best value to the company, because you're going to bring yourself back home and we spend 1/3 of our lives at work. If you're not happy at work, I can honestly say that, is your anger or negativity is going to transfer back to your family, which is not healthy as well. So it is in your best interest that you are in a happy and joyful state if you can. Yeah.
Okay, then in that case, Siew Yen, as a coach,
Yeah.
as a happiness coach, if someone is facing difficulties in being happy, whether at work, which obviously then is hindering their happiness not only at work
Yeah.
but also in their personal lives, as a coach, Siew Yen, what would you do to engage these people and help them?
Yeah, so I would definitely, try to find out the context, like, what's making them unhappy because it varies for different individuals. And I would say that's why the conversation comes back to purpose and meaning, right? Do they see purpose and meaning in the work that they do? If this is something within their control, if it's something outside their control, it could be that they have a really toxic boss or colleagues. Is there help that they can get? So it really depends on the factors. But I would say if it's not something too serious, of course, if it's something serious, I also do get them to seek professional help. But I would say, coming back to positive psychology is finding out what are their strengths and how they can flourish and thrive in the workplace as well. And once they are able to understand what is really bringing them down or what's really making them unhappy, then I think it's easier to break it down as well. But of course, you have to look at it. Is it something within your control or is it something outside your control? Because you always have to see how you respond to the situation. Yeah.
Now, Siew Yan, then I want to ask you, and this is an organizational issue because if your staff are not engaged and happy, you're not going to get great productivity. So, as a leader, what would you suggest to companies or leaders in order to have a happier workforce or a happier team under them?
Yeah. So that's why I believe in good leadership. So it's not really a person's responsibility to make someone else happy, but it's trying to understand how can I give you support? What support do you need? And I know I think it's perfectly understandable. Sometimes organizations they have business to run, and most of the time leaders are also given pressure, right? They need to deliver the results and ensure performance is at its highest level. But I think if it's possible, it should be a one-on-one conversation between the leader and their direct report in terms of what support do they need, what kind of engagement or what else can help them become more productive at work. Because at the end of the day, it's up to the employee whether the person takes the advice. And in similar to coaching, right? I can't coach a person that doesn't want to be coached. But if the leader is really truly doing their best to help the employee, giving them providing psychological safety for the employee to voice out to tell what's support they need, I think it will really make a difference instead of just shutting them down and expecting them to perform, status quo. So it's not a easy answer, but I would say it's not something that is impossible as well. I think that's where positive leadership comes in, making sure that you create a safe and positive environment where everyone feels included. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion and all that as well, right? And
Mhm.
I think it can be quite an isolating experience if someone feels excluded or someone doesn't feel. I think the sense of belonging in an organization is really important. So I think if the leader and the community is willing to work together, they could make a difference. But it does take work.
Okay, so Stu Yan, what we're going to do now is a very interesting thing. We're going to bring in a CEO and get his perspective on happiness in the workplace and what was important to him as he ran different organization. And I'm going to bring in Oz Ahmad. Oz, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hello, Brian. Nice to meet
Hi,
you.
Oz. Nice to meet
Siew
you
Yen?
as well.
Did I get your name right, Siew Yen?
Yes, correct. Thank you. Yes.
Now, so I asked Oz to join us. Now, Oz used to run HSBC Islamic in Malaysia as its CEO, and also used to run Al Raji Bank as its CEO in Malaysia, and currently runs a fintech. He's a chairman of MMOB. So I thought, as a leader, really, he could give us some insights into what are the hot buttons he had when really running organizations like the bank, and also then when he set up a digital bank. Oz, maybe you today the conversation is around happiness in the workplace. Give us your perspective as a leader that had to juggle the fact that you had to deliver to shareholders, but at the same time, in order to do so, you had to have a happy workforce.
Yeah, the first thing is that I think any leader is work in progress, and I think that what I will say will paint a picture that has the benefit of 2020 hindsight. So, I mean, if we're talking in the context of happiness, I'm kind of reminded of Rumi. So he's kind of a philosopher that some people will be familiar
Yeah.
with. And he says that it is love that gives joy to happiness. It is love that gives joy to happiness. And by the way, when I start referencing Rumi or something else, I actually think that's important for a leader to do. I think a leader should have a philosophical bent to them because they need to think. And they need to think through things in order to make decisions that impact an organization. So I think having a philosophical view of things is important for leaders, along with the important technical skills and all the other bits and non-technical skills that they have. So when we talk about that, and again, I'm kind of taking the benefit of 2020 hindsight of a career, is to say that someone has to love the organization that they work for. They have to love going to work, or they have to love their work, or they have to love the organization. So in that case, they will be happier and hopefully happy. And I think that how do you make that happen is the key question. And the key question to that is actually culture. So now I'm talking about the responsibility of the organization. And I've got a point about culture, which I've kind of is evolved over time. But the reason I mention culture is that the moment you can articulate unabashedly, very clearly what your culture is, you will be able to attract people where that culture resonates. When that resonates, they're going to love working at that place. And that is the key in terms of happiness. So when I think about it, it's weird when we think about happiness in the workplace. I actually think about love. And no one's going to love, not 100% of people are going to love an organization. But if you're very clear about what your culture is and is not, that helps to address that. And why do I think culture is exceptionally important? Therefore, that link to happiness. Because over my career, when I was in my mid-20s, I was absolutely certain the way to drive value for an organization was strategy. Get the great strategy. In fact, the more you pay the consultant, the big titles, that's to be the best strategy, and that will drive value. And then I found that over time, in my experience, that wasn't quite what it was. It's not to throw away the work that consultants do, of course not. Then I believed, as I started to study more and kind of get more involved in managing teams and so on, I believed it was organizational behavior. It was that bit, that organizational behavior side, because without the organizational behavior on how you interact and do stuff, and without that a firm understanding of organizational behavior by leaders and people who work there, you would never get the strategy executed. And that was when I was in my mid-30s. And I'm kind of near my mid-40s now. And I used to think those things in the past. I absolutely know this now, that the first thing someone should focus on is their culture. Because until you get your culture right, there is no organizational behavior, trickery, and learnings that you can put into an organization to change it materially versus what culture will do, and being clear about what your culture is and advocating for that culture and behaviors. And without that, you will never get your strategy executed. So my view is that culture is the most important thing in driving value for an organization, but also happiness within an organization.
Now, can I just make a point here? I want to just sound out somebody from social media that just basically from with the handle Kyle Zone, KYL Zone, and he or she had this to say. I think that going back to Richard Branson's quote, treat people well enough so that they can take care of your company. Now, that is something that really resonates with me.
Yeah. So Richard Branson said that if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers. And if your customers have been taken care of, that will take care of your shareholders. So he always focuses on the employee, and that was something that Richard Branson. Carl's absolutely right. That was the approach he took, and grew some great businesses from that.
Now, Oz, from your perspective, and having some background understanding of what you did at Al Rajhi Bank, when you took over the bank, um, there was some challenges around morale, and then I know for a fact that that improved dramatically during your tenure. What did you do to improve morale and make your workforce happier?
So I'll talk more generally rather than any specific organization, because I think that the general approach has been the same in all of the leadership roles that I take, even today. And that's really about setting out what the greatest imaginable challenge of the organization could be, to give people something that they can focus on, that is ambitious and that they're going to be part of, and bring as many people on the journey who are there already, and enable them to be able to have opportunities to try something and be part of it. And so that's kind of the approach that I took. And like I said, if you think about that, that's an organizational behavior approach. And I think that as I've kind of evolved, I've realized that it definitely gets somewhere. But I think that the everyday person walking in, they're going to have a group of people who could be involved in something transformational, and there's always going to be people that are not. And so when I started thinking about that more, it was like, across all of the different roles that I've done, I started to realize that, potentially spending a year, maybe more, on kind of working on articulating culture and the type of culture that any organization should foster. That is, the advice that I would give people. I'm not searching for another CEO role and doing any big roles, to be very honest with you. But someone was going to ask, if you were to give advice of everything that you've done, what would you do differently? I would literally say, look, convince your stakeholders, your board, whoever it is, we want to spend a big amount of time on actually culture. And that would be my kind of bombshell revelation from the time that I spent in some of the roles that I've done.
And that's hard, isn't it? So a lot of times, and again at BizTech Asia, we speak to a lot of CEOs, and Siew Yen, so this is the thing. That's why when you talked about happiness, that really resonated with me, because a lot of CEOs give lip service to the whole thing of, again, what you mentioned earlier, DEI. It's the buzzword. We do that. But it's something that's a box ticking exercise rather than part of culture. And that's really, inclusivity is really part of the whole happiness in the workforce perspective, making sure that everyone's on the same page and moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, you often, when you ask companies, what's your biggest asset? And the question they always say is the people. So I would say, if people is the most important asset, isn't it important for them to be happy and productive as well? And I love what Oz just mentioned, right? The philosophical bent and your evolution as a leader. I mean, being a head of such large organizations must have been really difficult. And you can't expect everyone to do the same thing, right? And that's where I also completely agree that culture is really important. I mean, we can see, companies like Enron and other, where profit came first and everything else fell apart, because there was so much toxicity within the workplace, competition amongst their own internal teams, no teamwork at all. So I would say that, because culture will also shape your leadership, it comes from the top. If you tolerate or allow toxic behavior, it's just going to manifest, to your direct reports at the bottom as well. So culture is not something that, again, it's not an overnight journey. It takes a lot of investment, a lot of time. It's not just lip service. You really need to walk the talk, right? Your leaders need to make sure that they become positive role models. But it's simple acts like this that, eventually, as you believe in the culture, people will then believe that this company really does do what it says, in terms of being a respectful workplace. I think at the end of the day, every employee just wants to feel that their contributions are acknowledged, that they are treated with respect and dignity. And I think even some simple basic things like this can actually lead to a happier employee as well. So we shouldn't underestimate, simple acts of kindness at work. And I think that's really key to ensuring that even though it's not easy, but at least we can try. Yeah.
Now we've got another question from Nancy Lee. I'm going to bring Nancy on. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Good to see you again.
Hey, Nancy.
Nice to see you as well. So you've got a question for Siew Yen?
Yeah, okay. So I will bring it from the organization to something personal. So Siew Yen and I are coaches, and many coaches actually find a lot of purpose in helping their clients. But at the same time, sometimes coaches do go on overdrive in helping people, and at the same time, they need to manage like their own business and so forth. So I'm just wondering, Siew Yen, like how can coaches keep that balance of not going from happiness to unhappiness, by taking care of their own personal well-being and not to be overstressed in just helping people.
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Nancy. That's a really good question. So not just for coaches, right? Even for entrepreneurs or people starting their own business, because I understand, they're really every hour that they're working is really literally to ensure there's money in the pocket at the end of the day. But I think before you can, Brian is nodding his head. But I think what's more important is that before you can give to others, you need to make sure your cup is full, right? Similar like in an airplane emergency, you can't help others, but you need to put that oxygen mask on yourself first. And I tell people that, a simple mantra, I deserve to be happy. And, it may sound strange, but we often put the happiness of others first. So it's completely understandable. We put the happiness of our children, our parents, our mother-in-law on top of others, and we're right at the bottom, right? And I would say that if you keep giving, you're going to be depleted and exhausted. And honestly, that's not going to be a viable or sustainable solution at the end. So I would say, learn to take time. Don't feel guilty. I think there seems to be a lot of guilt in taking time off and looking after ourselves, but it's actually good to recharge, right? I feel the same as well. Sometimes I feel like, oh, if I'm not doing something, I'm not being productive, I'm wasting my time. It took me a long time to override that. And yeah, some people feel guilty taking a day off from work, but if you don't shut off, you eventually burn out. So you can't be a candle. There was a simple analogy, right? It's either you want to be a candle or you want to be a solar panel. So a candle, that means you're burning out and then you're just going to get wasted. But solar panel, you're getting energy from the sun and you're going to spread that energy to others, right? So do you want to be a candle or do you want to be a solar panel? So I would try to be a solar panel if I can. So yeah, that's my simple answer to that question. Yeah.
Do you know, as you're saying that, Siew Yen, I remember, just for background, whilst I'm a Muslim, I'm Muslim, but I grew up in the UK, and I went to I don't know if it must have been Church of England school, I think. Now, in the Christian tradition, so obviously I grew up in the UK, so heavily influenced from that perspective, and there was always this focus on kindness and love, and that was a central tenet of, I think Christianity generally and Catholicism as well, but obviously the UK's Church of England is Protestant, and it was a central tenet. And I remember, and you'd have like kind of pastors and so on and so forth come in and give talks, and they were talking about the virtues of kindness, right, and love and kindness. And one of the very interesting things that stayed with me for a long time is when the person said, and one of the people you need to be kind to is yourself. And so when you were talking about that part around putting yourself, looking out for yourself as well, being the solar panel as opposed to the candle, I was reminded of that. That's a kind of thing that I've I'm not the best at it because I tend to maybe put other people a lot first to my detriment, and that's like a very Asian thing. My parents obviously of Asian heritage, and there's a lot of honor in that, and I understand that. I totally get that, and I feel. It feels as an obligation, and I think Asians generally are the same. If I might be able to say that, being a child of two worlds, but I think that kind of thing that stayed with me was be kind to everyone. Go out of your way to be kind to everyone, but in the people you're being kind to, be kind to yourself too. And that's the thing that it reminded me when you mentioned that about
I love that sharing. Thank you so much, Oz. Yeah.
Thanks, Siew Yen, and also.
It's been such a great conversation, and thank you, Oz and Nancy, for adding to Siew Yen as the guest for today. But we're running out of time right now. But before we leave, we'd love to hear from Nancy and Oz, perhaps on your thoughts on happiness in the workplace. We'll start with Nancy. You're on mute, Nancy. Sorry. We can't hear you.
Maybe Oz, you'd like to go first? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, no, maybe I'll just do a bit of a repeat of the thing that I touched on before. And I think that, I think people will be happiest in a workplace when they're working at a place that they love. Try and find that place. And I think that place you'll love is the ones that's aligned to your values from a culture perspective. And I think if you find that, a lot of other things tend to fall into place. And I would just say, recommend to people that they don't compromise on that. And that doesn't mean to take some drastic action all of a sudden, but one is to recognize it. And once you've recognized that, articulating what, is important from you from a values perspective, that you'd find that culture and find that organization, and over time, or organizations, find yourselves there. And that's what I would, kind of my top tip when it comes to individuals looking for a place that they'll be happier. And I think earlier I covered the role the organization can do and things that they can do to facilitate that.
Nancy, anything you'd like to add?
With that, I think I'll just write on what Oz has mentioned, that happiness is not dependent on our circumstances, but it's something that is inside us. So going back to my own values, my own purpose of working in that organization.
How about you, Siew Yen? Any final thoughts before we end the show?
Yeah, I'll just keep it simple. Life's too short to be unhappy. I think probably some of you have heard of the book 5 Regrets of the Dying, and sometimes we put our happiness on hold, right? We feel that we can only be happy when XYZ happens. And I tell people that if you do not know how to be happy now, you won't know how to be happy in the future, because there's always going to be something more that you need to do, or there's always going to be a problem that you can't solve. So I think it's really learning to embrace what you have right now, and still understanding that you can still be happy regardless of the situation. And it's looking for that, that spark of joy. It doesn't need to be big things, daily joy. So like gratitude, right? Every day, every night before I go to sleep, I ask my daughter, what is one thing you can be grateful for? And I think that rewires the brain, because we have a negative bias. So my advice is look for the silver lining and be grateful, because there's really so much we can be grateful for. Yeah.
Look for the silver lining and be grateful. And we'll end on that note. Thank you very much to both our guests, Nancy and Oz, for coming on. And also, we've been speaking to Siew Yen, Certified Master Coach, author, and speaker of Positive Life and Leadership. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's AHA, the coaching show, which is produced in partnership with Corporate Coaching Academy. You will find the show on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as Corporate Coaching Academy's website, as well as our syndication partners and TV stations. Thank you very much for tuning in.